Cool.
All right. So good evening, everybody. My name is Richard Anton Diaz, and I'm the founder of Sexy Spirits, founded in 1999 in New York City. And
You sure you're old enough for that, Richard?
Yeah, 1999. And I'm proud of it. So you'll be seeing all my pictures with black hair when I had it. And now you can see me in my silver fox look. And
yeah.
I won't tell you if I touch it up a little bit or not. You'll have to guess. Anyway, what I want to say that Sexy Spirits was known for bringing in incredible educators from all over. And I literally mean not just the United States, but all over the world. And we had so many that came through our doors. We were fortunate enough to film many of them, unfortunate enough not to fill all of them. But there was one in particular, one speaker that she came in. Her name was Betty Martin. And I remember kind of hearing a little bit about what she was saying, but you know what? In all honesty, I just didn't get it. I thought it was kind of, to be quite honest, I thought it was kind of a nice way to communicate before you get into all the good stuff that I was teaching and thought, was far more maybe exciting or pleasurable.
Yeah.
Who knows? That's where my head went. Well, you can see where I was in 1999, but I think it was way in that. Now, the reason why I say that is because quite by accident, I came across Betty's work, in particular, her Wheel of Consent, very recently. And I came across it at a time that I was in a personal confusion in what I was hoping would be a relationship. It wasn't, but the person that I was pursuing, if you will, just kept me hanging on, and she did it quite well. And I just was so confused with all my wisdom and knowledge, which I didn't have apparently to handle that. Like, why was I entrapped in this, how would I say, emotional situation where I seemed to be giving and this person seemed to be taking, and yet there was no reciprocity, if you will, or there was no reward out of that, or there was no pleasure out of that, to put it mildly. And when I came across Betty Martin's Wheel of Consent, I just saw one thing that totally answered exactly what was happening. And I could not believe that I had missed that many years ago when Betty Martin was in my living room speaking, and here I was. I guess I just had to evolve and catch up with Betty. And I don't know if I will, because after reading her book, which she has just come out with, called The Wheel of Consent, she's going to talk about that. And I think there's more to that title. I won't pull it up because I don't want to interfere my train of thought, but she's just come out with this book, which I, of course, got immediately on Kindle. And I will tell you, I thought I was going to read, a short little concise handbook and just get some basic configurations and ideas of how she created the Wheel of Consent. But I could see that Betty was way ahead of her game. 20 years ago, I think that's when Betty was in my living room discussing and talking to our audience. And I just realized how important it is that this work come out, especially at a time when we are eventually moving back toward touch, back toward connection. And what Betty has offered, in my opinion, is something that I've just never seen before. Maybe that's why I missed it. It didn't have no connection with any reality that I'd known before. Yet it was so based in human simplicity and connection that I simply had to find out what was happening. So it is my pleasure to introduce this incredible pioneer, in my opinion, Betty Martin. Please welcome Betty to the screen.
Thank you. Thank you.
So Betty.
20 years ago in your living room, my goodness.
Do you remember that?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah, it was a fun little group.
It was.
Yeah.
It was. Where was I?
Well, it's not uncommon that people, when they hear the wheel the first time, it kind of doesn't sink in. That's
Yes.
very common. And
Yes.
and sometimes it takes coming back to it a number of times before it kind of hits you upside the head.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. What I would like to do, Betty, just for any of our audience that doesn't kind of know what you're all about, is just show them very quickly about you. Let me just share the screen here. And this is that wonderful book we were talking. The Art of Receiving and Giving, The Wheel of Consent with Betty Martin. Okay, I knew. See, I only remember the things that hit me.
Close enough.
And if you go to bettymartin.org, and she will tell you more about that at the end of this talk, that is where you can find everything about Betty Martin, the classes she's offering, her wonderful book, and gosh, just incredible. So we will be talking about that. The Wheel of Consent that I was referring to, this is actually the I've actually written a little note up there, which I'll talk to Betty about, but this is actually the Wheel of Consent that we're going to talk about. And Betty, I'm going to ask you first of all how you came about this, and then I think a good way to kind of approach this interview is to just delve into this as the centerpiece of your work, if that's okay.
Sure.
Especially the one that moved me, because I'm sure you're going to be curious about that.
Yes, I am actually. So I was doing sacred intimate work in Seattle in the 90s or aughts or sometime. Yeah, in the aughts, I guess. And which means I guide people through erotic experiences for them to learn something and have some ahas. So it's essentially sex work. And sometime before, I had taken a workshop with the Body Electric School called Power and Surrender. And we learned a game there. It was called a 3-minute game. And the game consists of two people. You ask each other these two questions. And you do whatever you agree to. And the two questions are, what do you want to do to me for 3 minutes? And what do you want me to do to you for 3 minutes? And we played it, and oh my gosh, it was so fun. I just couldn't believe it. And when I took it into my client sessions, I started asking people, how do you want me to touch you for 3 minutes? Or how do you want to touch me for 3 minutes? And it became obvious really quickly that that was confusing for people. And I'd ask people, how do you want me to touch you for a few minutes? And very often they'd say, well, I have no idea. No one has ever asked me that. Or, well, you could rub my shoulders, I guess, which is true, but it doesn't answer the question. The question is, what do you want? And saying what you want can be a vulnerable place. Of course it can. So that was the first question. Then they'd say, well, will you rub my shoulders? And I'd rub their shoulders or whatever. So that was one half of the game. How do you want me to touch you for 3 minutes? And then the other half of the game is, how do you want to touch me for 3 minutes? And that's where people really got confused. And they'd say, well, I don't know, am I allowed to do that? Or I don't know, I'll do whatever you want. Well, that's maybe true, but it doesn't answer the question. The question is what you want. And being asked what you want is difficult for many of us. And sometimes it was just like paralyzed and they just couldn't figure it out. Sometimes that, with a little support and coaching, they could figure it out. But what those two questions create is a dynamic in which if I'm saying to you, Anton, how do you want me to touch you for 3 minutes? You say, well, rub my ears, and I'm rubbing your ears. Then I'm doing what you want. And that's a great dynamic. The other dynamic is, how do you want to touch me? And you say, well, may I play with your hair? And I say, yes, and you're playing with my hair. And in that dynamic, you are doing, but it's for you. So what it showed is that there's a difference between I can do what you want or I can do what I want. What's the difference and why does it matter? And likewise, you can do what you want, you can do what I want. So each of those, they overlap into quadrants, and that's where the diagram comes from. But it's really a diagram of what happens when two people ask each other those two questions. So I'm doing what I want or I'm doing what you want, and what's the difference and why does it matter? Or you're doing what you want or you're doing what I want, and what's the difference and why does it matter? So it's a model, and it's a practice of taking, receiving, and giving apart. So it's either all about what you want, and I'm respecting my limits, of course, or it's all about what I want, and we're taking turns. And so I'm either receiving or giving and not doing both at once. And that's where the power of it comes in. It's not that I think that you should live your whole life only taking turns. But as a practice, you learn things when you take them apart that you learn no other way. When it's all about me, I learn some things that I can learn no other way. I have some experiences that I can have that I have no other way. And likewise, when I'm giving to you, it's all about you. It's either about how you want to be touched or it's about how you want to touch, but either way, it's about you. And we both have experiences that are possible no other way. And so that's why I came to realize that it was a practice. It doesn't substitute for your life. It doesn't substitute for the times when you just want to hang out and play. That's a different. But as a practice, it reveals, it'll show you what's hard for you. It will challenge you. It will bring ahas. You'll see dynamics that are happening in your life that you like you said, you couldn't quite put your finger on what was amiss, and then you see it and you go, oh my God, that's what I was doing. No wonder it was hard. Yeah. So that's what the wheel is.
Yes.
And there's more layers to it, but you can get that online.
Absolutely. And I want to give our listeners some context to now, as I hear you speak, now it's coming back to me. Yeah, I remember. And I remember what it was that I didn't quite connect with. And this is very interesting because you said in the beginning, you were in Washington State, West Coast, right?
Yeah.
And you were, could you tell me again what that title was? You were a
sacred intimate. I was a sex worker.
Okay.
Yeah.
At that time, that in New York City where I live is woo-woo language. You see, we're behind the times. We're not, we were just, if you remember, learning about expanded orgasm and orgasmic providing. And, we were so brand new to what the West Coast was already doing, and not only doing, but now finding the correct filters to even make it better. So now I'm getting, what happened. And I want to say this because to a great degree, we in the East Coast do, we have that similar same mentality in a way, though thanks to things like Sexy Spirits and the communities that are here, it's more than it ever has been. But we have so much now to learn in the pioneering that you have done on the West Coast. So, I'd like to ask you, now that you've explained doing and being done to and giving and receiving, because when we were learning touch, sensual touch, okay, we, on a personal level, I saw very clearly that I was offering to touch someone, but I was getting a lot out of that. And because, and as they were, but because those energies were never clear, it could easily shift and move out of what I've seen that you've presented. Who's really receiving the gift?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
not that that's necessarily wrong, but the brilliance of what you've done is that when it's done, when it hasn't been fully agreed to, no matter how genuine both people are and trusting, it causes disharmony. It causes a break. And
Sure.
that's what's so brilliant about,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
just so-
Confusion can be really wonderful and blissful, and it can make some problems.
yes.
So if you're lucky, it's blissful and nobody really cares because nobody really knows. But boy, it can go south real fast.
Yes.
Yeah.
As I've experienced. That's why I think your work, as I get people asking more about the what we call sensual loving touch now,
Mm-hmm.
changed it from that to orgasmic providers, because we found that both men and women want to become givers and doers. It's not just men wanting it. I've realized that this was the missing piece in order to really make it integrated into something with integrity and with consciousness, which is, really what we're all about, doing this with consciousness.
Yeah. Well, you're right that the wheel gets divided up. One question is who is doing, and either you're doing or I'm doing. That's pretty clear.
Yes.
And a different question is who is it for? And that's not always clear. That really takes that takes an agreement, and it also takes a little bit of practice to be able to get clear on that. And so those two questions overlap. Let me define receive and give, because doing and done to, that's pretty clear.
Right.
But receive and give can be a little confusing, because receive, for example, the word has many meanings, and a couple of them are, one is that something is coming towards me, it happens to me, it's done to me, or it arrives at me. So I can receive a caress, I can receive a package in the mail, I can receive a pass to the 20-yard line, I can receive a punch in the jaw. Doesn't mean I want it, but it just means it arrives. So that's one use of the word. Another use of the word is that it's a gift for me and it's something that I want. But here's the problem. It may be that the gift I want is for you to give me a nice back rub, and you're doing, or maybe what the gift I want is to feel you up and run my hands up your shirt. Well, that's a gift to me. But now, instead of being done to, I'm the one that's doing. So now you have this kind of, are you talking about who's doing? Are you talking about who it's for? And so just for clarifying, in the book and in the work, when I say receive and give, I talk about who it's for, not who's doing.
Right. And when you say who it's for, I think we need to
Yeah.
clarify that I like the word gifting or gift. And I don't mean, I think when we talk about it in terms of touch, we're talking about, in a sense, an emotional or energetic gift, one of pleasure, or one of love, or one of harmony. So, and just to be clear, when we talk about the action of doing or being done to, the distinction that you made that's very profound is that one can be doing and for the purpose of receiving an emotional or pleasurable sensation.
Yes,
or,
absolutely.
And one can be being done to in order to give the emotional or pleasurable sensation to someone else. And that's profound. That's quite a difference, because that's where the lines get blurred. In other words, if we've never made those specific distinctions, then we can have kind of a nice way of inviting someone to be touched, but in the back of our mind, we want to get off. We want to get, and then we have to hide that if we have shame about it.
Right.
But if we have someone that's honest, we say, hey, I'd like to get off touching you. Would that be cool with you? That would work.
Fabulous.
We might get a no, but that would be far more human and integrity than being manipulative about it.
Absolutely. And most people, because the word receive has two meanings, they conflate the two meanings. And so when they say,
Yes.
well, I'm receiving, they mean I'm being done to, and we're taking that apart. We're not using it that way.
Yes. And I read the word conflating a lot in your book. So listeners, whenever you come across a word, look it up in the dictionary. Do not go any further. Conflating means when you put together two things and conclude that they work when they really might not necessarily.
Yeah.
So
Means you think they're the same thing, but they're not.
they're not. In other words, and I think what Betty's referring to is when we do, we assume we're giving. When we're
Yes.
being done to, we receive receiving. But no, as you shall see, and as I
Yeah.
realize in my days of doing and being done to, I was really crisscrossing them back and forth
Oh,
without
yeah.
without any conscious awareness that I was doing
Yeah.
that.
It's very confusing.
Yeah, and I could see why there were disharmonies around that, or there were confusions around that. Now it's very clear.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So one of the things, and I know we may be jumping, and gosh, I just want to absorb everything out of you. Could I go to the wheel of consent and ask you and tell you the thing that caught me? And
oh yeah, I definitely want to hear that. Yeah.
And the reason why is not so much to get a session from you, but to understand the nomenclature that you're using. You use certain nomenclature, which I want to specify to make sure our listeners, when they read it. So let me just show everybody the wheel of consent that we're talking about. Oh, I see. It wants me to, let's see if I can get away with, yeah. Yeah, because of the compromise situation with my, okay, here it is.
Okay, because I can do it too if you need that.
Oh, that might be better.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to have to get you to share your wheel of consent. Yeah, that would be great, Betty. And this
Okay,
way,
let me pull it up.
yeah, and I'm going to make
then-
you a host. More, make co-host. Yeah, you should. That would be great. This way, my computer will not sabotage me by saying you're out of memory, which I had no idea I was.
Okay, now there's the thing. Now let me
You
share
can
it.
just share it. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Very good. So you have there. Let me tell you what happened when I read this. Okay.
Well, let me give you the names here first.
Okay.
and
Yes.
sort of
Yes.
give you a
Please.
tour. So you
Yes.
see that the line that's running up and down, the line that's running across separates who's doing. So if you're either doing or you're done to. That's
Right.
the top and the bottom.
Yes.
The right and the left are about who it's for. So if you're giving a gift, it's for them. If you're receiving a gift, it's for you. And so you have these overlapping. So if you're doing and it's for them, those two overlap and create a quadrant, which I'm calling serve. That's most people think of as giving, but we need a different word because the whole side is giving. And the upper right, you have a combination of you're doing, but you're receiving a gift. It's for you. And I call that taking. Taking is a problematic word because a lot of people think it means stealing, but it doesn't. You're receiving a gift.
Yes.
And then the lower right, it's a combination of you're being done to, and it's for you. So I call that accept. Accept is a little problematic too, but most people call that receiving. But receiving, taking is also receiving. So we needed a different word. So it's called accept. And then the lower left is allow, where it's a combination of you're being done to and it's for them. So you're allowing someone to do something to you that they want to do and that you don't mind them doing.
Gotcha. And the thing I want to clarify, Betty, you correct me if I'm wrong, please. This is a paradigm that works as a one-way street in a way. And what I mean by that is,
Yes.
we are creating a container where we're not exchanging back and forth as we would say love making, where, oh, I'm
Right.
pleasing you, you're pleasing me. No, these are containers that again, the West Coast were kind of way ahead of the East Coast on this, and probably still is, where where these are guidelines to really create containers. Uh,
Mhm.
the thing that happened to me is I immediately realized when I looked at your shadow side. Now that's what I'm going to be asking you. You call these the shadow side. And I realized as soon as I saw serve and accept, I said, oh my God, I can't believe it. I'm the do-gooder for this person. I'm the rescue. I'm the martyr. I'm a
Oh,
slave to
yeah.
this person. And you know what? They're just taking, and yeah, and they're not even thanking me. They're like privileged. And
Mhm.
it just defined so exactly. And I said, whatever this chart is, or whatever Betty's trying to say, I just got to learn all this, because this is tapped into human behavior, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
if I can kind of redefine this, I was in a non-consensual, one directional
Mhm.
relationship with somebody that I wasn't aware of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And chances are, who knows, maybe they didn't even want what you were trying to give.
Exactly.
But we've all been guilty. Many of us have been guilty of that thing. We try to give because we think, I don't know, we think we'll get something back, or
Yes.
it makes us feel good about ourselves, or we don't know what else to do,
Yes.
or any number of reasons. But
Yeah.
yeah,
So
give,
when you say
give.
shadow side, what are you referring to, or what is that to you, so that we can understand what you mean
Um,
by that?
so for people who are listening to the audio, we're looking at a circle with 4 quadrants. And inside the circle is when you make an agreement. You say, may I? Yes, you may. Or you say, will you? Yes, I will. And then you have an agreement. Outside the circle means that you the same action can happen, but you don't have an agreement about it. For example,
I
I can
see.
say, may I put my hand up your shirt? And you say, yeah. And we do that. Or I can just walk over and grab you and stick my hand up your shirt, in which case the same action has happened, but there's no agreement about it.
Mm.
So that's what I'd call groping or assault, or,
Uh,
you know, um, and uh, so the shadow I'm using very broadly speaking. This is not a Jungian term. It just means the action's happening, but there's no agreement.
that makes total sense. It's
Yeah.
outside the container of
Yes.
consent.
Yeah.
Wow, now I get it. Beautiful.
Yeah.
So those are, and there's probably even more definable mishaps that could happen outside that
Oh
circle.
yes,
But
many.
I mean, look at
Many.
our look at the sad situation that occurred to our, who I thought was a good governor of New York city just recently, New York State actually. He fell outside that circle of consent, and he unfortunately changed his whole life on misunderstanding. And how many of us, me included, have been lucky to kind of, all of us, I think all of us, especially as men, have unknowingly, been on the outside of that circle, and not knowing, how this caused so much disharmony
Yeah.
and so much break in relationships with people that, it's sad to say we can't be friends with anymore, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, that's very
Yeah.
clear, very clear. Now, looking further at this, when you have could you talk a little bit about the take and allow, where you have the arrows going in two directions, both directions?
Yeah. So there's an arrow there that is labeled action, and
Okay.
there's an arrow there that's labeled gift.
I see.
So in serve accept, the action goes from the serving person to the accepting person. And the gift is also going that direction. You have said, will you rub my back? I'm rubbing your back. I'm giving you the gift of my action. So the action arrow and the gift arrow both go from sir to accept. In the take allow dynamic, it's different. The action goes from the taker to the allower, but the gift is going the other direction. So you have said, may I play with your hair? And I've said, yes, you may. Now the action's going from you to me, but the gift is going from me to you.
Wow.
Yes, and the gift is access. I'm giving you access to me, and that's the gift. And that's a very real and significant gift to give.
Wow.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So clear, and yet so not understood. I mean, is that an oxymoron that I'm saying?
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And I stumbled upon it by playing the 3-minute game with dozens of people. It just became very obvious right away that, oh, I'm doing this for you, or I'm doing this for me, and it's different. Those are very different experiences.
I see.
So it came from the 3-minute game. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you want to say a little bit about that 3-minute game?
Well, it was developed by a man named Harry Faddis, who lives in upstate New York at Easton Mountain. And he was working with Body Electric School at the time. So that's where I learned it.
I see.
And it's just those two questions. What do you want me to do to you for 3 minutes? And what do you want to do to me for 3 minutes?
I see.
I mean, if all you get out of this whole talk is just ask each other those two questions, go for it. You'll have a lot of fun.
Yeah. Wow.
And you'll also have some discoveries that you probably did not expect.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can look on YouTube. There's a YouTube of us playing it, and you can look on my website.
Yes, I've seen it. Yeah. So at that time, yeah, I remember the West Coast was way ahead of the game. You know, funny story. I mean, you'll appreciate this real quick, but you know, when I first went to college, I got a scholarship to Fairfield University, which is a Jesuit-run school right here in the East Coast. Luckily, I got my grades high enough to transfer, and I was hitchhiking to my counselor, and he picked me up in the car and he said, where are you going? So I'm going to my counselor. I got to get out of this school and go to another one. He said, well, what are you looking for? I said, I want a school with no structure. And he said, you want Antioch College? I said, really? What's Antioch? It's the most progressive liberal college, you know, in the United States right now.
In Ohio or something, right?
It was in Ohio. Yeah. Yellow Springs, Ohio.
Yeah.
So I went to my, and you'll appreciate this story in terms of our interview, but I walked into my office of the counselor, sat down. He says, I want to go to Antioch. And he said, really? I said, yeah, just want to go to Antioch. He said, well, your grades are good enough. We should be able to get you a scholarship. I went to Antioch. I got accepted into Antioch. The first day we arrived, my mom leaves us off. She drives all the way back. My mom and dad. I go into the dorm. This curly haired Californian girl comes in. Okay, we're going to introduce everybody to everybody, but here's how we're going to do it. We're going to turn off the lights. You're going to be pitch black, and you're just going to go around and touch each other. I said, what? So you can see that was my first realizing they're in a different world out there in California.
Which was a very progressive thing to do, but it wouldn't fly today.
I know, isn't that amazing? It wouldn't. Yeah. And I say that because I imagine when you were, you were probably at a time when you were doing that 3-minute rule, and you were already in that world, I'm assuming, of touching and being touched and learning that paradigm.
Yeah.
Where what happened to you personally that made you want to explore that aspect? I mean, that's a very profound observation that you made, or awareness. I'm just curious what made you temporarily not think about the fun you were having, or what what problem happened that made you become aware of this new thought?
Well, it was just noticing when we played the game in the workshop the very first time, and I said, "What do you want to do to me?" And they said, "Blah, blah, blah." And I said, "Okay." And they said, "What do you want me to do to you?" And I said, "Blah, blah, blah." And they said, "Okay." And it was just obvious that those were two different things.
Wow.
And I think as I look back on it, I think there's a couple things that made a difference.
Yeah.
One is, if I'm going to be touching you for my pleasure, what I need before I can do that, of course, is your permission, but I also need my hands to be awake to take in sensation. Because if I can't feel any pleasure in my hands, then I'm not going to feel any pleasure from touching you, because it's just not, those wires are not hooked up. And this is something that I eventually noticed after working with a lot of clients, is that some people would have a really hard time learning how to touch for their own pleasure. And I realized that, and I did some experiments with it, and I realized that, oh, it's not that they don't know how to feel a person, it's that they don't know how to feel a thing, anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so I developed this practice called waking up the hands, which is also on YouTube. And because many people, our hands are so used to just doing the thing that we forget how to take in pleasure with our hands.
Yes.
So if you can touch a velvet cushion, or a plant, or feel a pine cone, or with your hands, and it feels pleasant to you, then that's going to make sense to you, and you'll be able to access touching a person for your pleasure, because people are interesting to feel. They have shapes, they have textures, they have temperatures, and so if your hands are not awake, you won't be able to make any sense of it. And my hands were very awake because I was a chiropractor. My hands, like, that's what I did with my hands. I took in information all day long. What joint is moving, what joint is not moving, what's the muscle tone. So my hands were very awake already. So that made touching someone else for my pleasure accessible to me. Otherwise, it wouldn't have made any sense. So that was a big piece. And another piece that was in place was that I already knew how to take turns, which many people don't know how to take turns. And I learned how to take turns by doing co-counseling for 30 years, which is taking turns listening to each other. So I would listen to you for 20 minutes, and then you listen to me for 20 minutes. And so it became very clear through that practice that when it's about me, it's really for me. It's not for you. And when it's for you, it's really for you. It's not about me. And so I learned the value and the skill in taking, receiving, and giving apart. So that was already in place. And my hands were already in place.
Yes.
So I think that's a really lucky combination. And then, because I was a practitioner, I had lots of people to play with. And dozens of people, hundreds of people over the years. And I think if I had just had one or two friends to play with, I wouldn't have noticed this sort of rich variety that comes with it, and the themes that come with it. But I played it with every client I had, because it was a way to find out what their skills levels were, what their comfort level was, how they touch, what they're afraid of, what their challenges are, what's exciting for them, what's comforting for them. So that was my kind of main modality for a lot of my work. And it could be very calming and therapeutic. It could also be wild and sexy, and it could, you know, depending on what people wanted and what they were there for, there was a huge range. But I think those things made it really possible for me. Those things were in place and made it click.
That makes
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. I can relate to that. In the Alexander work, I don't know if you've heard of
Oh, yeah.
the Alexander work, and how they just touch you, and all of a sudden you're standing in a certain way. And I remember my first one, they touched me, and I said, "What did you do to me?" She says, "I didn't do anything. All I did was I did it to myself, and you felt it." And
Yeah.
that was a
Yeah.
big changer for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
On that, I want to ask you about this, because when I go into doing someone, say in a play date with sensual loving touch, that's the only way I connect. I never think of my hands being a massage tool to make them feel good.
Right.
I always think of how their skin feels,
Mhm.
and I always, in that, I do it that way because I can see that that gives, it's my observation that they get the most pleasure from
Mhm.
that, and not me having a goal of trying to make them feel good. They're doing
Yeah.
something in their own body. And I actually, when they go into orgasm, I literally start going into orgasm. So,
Sure.
how do we distinguish between giving and receiving in that kind of context?
It's what your agreement is.
I see.
If you, as a practitioner, it's all about them pretty
Yeah.
much by definition. So you are giving the massage, you're giving the hand job, you're giving them the whatever. And so that's your agreement. Your hands are doing what they want.
I see.
Yeah.
Interesting. My
Because
hands are
if
doing.
yes, your hands are doing what they want. Because if they don't want you to touch them there, you are not going to touch them there, period. You know, if they want a long, slow stroke down their side, then you're going to give them a long, slow stroke down their side because it's for them. But what you're describing is really interesting because you're talking about the quality of your touch. And when your attention is on what's coming in your hands, what happens is that your hands relax.
Yes.
And that always feels better to the person you're touching. It's very difficult to relax under hands that are tense. It just doesn't work very well. So if you are super focused, okay, I got to get the technique right, and I have to make sure they feel this, and your hands are going to be tense, and it doesn't translate. It just doesn't work very well. And this is what is going on with many lovers and partners, because you're
Yes.
trying so hard to please them that then you become tense, and then it doesn't feel good to either of you, and you can't figure out why, and you're like, and then you call me or you.
Yes. And that other piece about relaxation is that when you're touching, say, a person's part of the body, and you're literally getting off on what their skin feels moment by moment, you don't want to rush. You want, I
No,
mean,
that's right. You don't want to.
every little movement is giving you a little mini orgasm. So
Yeah.
why would you want to go like that and miss
Yeah.
those
Right.
in between?
Right.
So
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
speed of everything just slows down, and you basically disintegrate time. Time doesn't
Yeah.
exist anymore
Yeah.
on a different plane.
Yeah. What you're playing, you're playing with this kind of delicate distinction between serving and taking,
Yes.
because
Yes.
you want, when you learn to the taking quadrant and you learn to feel somebody up for your own pleasure, and you have asked them, you know, can I feel this? They say no, but you can feel this, so you're feeling this. Because you've made an agreement. May I feel your back? Well, you're going to feel their back. You're not going to try to go over to their butt or their head, you know.
Right.
So it's because it's their, what permission they are giving you. So you're feeling their back, and you're paying attention to that sensation, the texture of the skin. It just feels luscious. And chances are they're going to enjoy it too. They may not, doesn't really matter. It's not about them. but they're giving that gift to you. Then when you have a different, now when you're serving, now it really is for them. But you take the awareness in your hands, it goes with you. So now I'm serving, you have asked me to rub your back, I'm rubbing your back, I'm doing what you want. But still, my hands are able to take in the sensation and enjoy it.
Yes.
And that's great, as long as I'm still keeping your experience in mind, because I'm here to serve you now
Got
for
it.
this next 5 minutes, you
It's
know.
beautiful. Beautiful.
So you're pointing out something that's really crucial in the quality of your touch, which
Yes,
is
I see.
attending to the sensation.
Yes.
Makes all the difference.
Absolutely.
Even though your agreement is to give to them. And the trick is, I may be giving you a nice back massage, and if I get so carried away with how your skin feels, and it feels great, and now I want to do this, and now I want to do that, I'm gone. I'm no longer serving you. But it is possible to serve you and to be attentive to the sensation in my hands.
Yeah.
That's what you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is so amazing because it's in the realm of, communication. I mean,
Yeah.
communication, when you start communicating at this level, what liberation you have where you go after that. And that's the beauty of this, and you don't have any, and the beauty is that, and I see it in your book, you can change your mind, right in the
Yes,
middle,
who knew?
because you're still communicating. Still do anytime. It's amazing.
Yeah.
There was one other aspect. My containers used to be, okay, when I was teaching a class here, and we would have couples, I said, and we would have retreats, and I would say, you cannot have sex. This touching session can get very erotic, very pleasurable. You're going to touch genitals, but you cannot have sex after this, or it cannot lead to sex.
Yeah.
You have to break the container, stop, take a little rest, and if you want to have sex, go and create another space and time for it, because then you're going to make the whole thing foreplay. You've broken the container.
Oh yeah, totally.
So
yeah.
But the container that you've created even encompasses that, because it's like when two people are, and you talk about, there's so much to talk about, and I just want to rush because I know you have to leave soon, but we're going to have another one of these talks. But you talked about one-way and two-way streets with pleasure. When people are making love, they go back and forth in their minds, not necessarily telling each other, oh, am I moaning enough for him? Oh, am I getting her off right? It's all going back and forth in the mind. And where's the room for really being in the moment? It's not there.
Yeah.
And what you've created not only a container, but you've created kind of a bubble where people don't need to be in their brain now. Their brain has been taken care of by just these initial agreements that you created. So, I just want to say, it's such a gift what you've brought, and why did it take me 20 years to really appreciate what you were all about? That's a bummer, but hey, I'm here now.
Here we are now.
But Betty, but can you tell people, let our listeners know where they can find you? Because I know you're offering these incredible certifications as well as classes. Can you talk a little bit about that, where they can find you?
Yeah, well, bettymartin.org. We'll link to the book from there. The book website is wheelofconsentbook.com, but they link back and forth. And we offer a course. We offer workshops on the Wheel of Consent all over the world and online, so you can find that there too. We also teach a workshop called Like a Pro, which is the Wheel of Consent for practitioners. And this is what you need to come to. The Wheel of Consent for practitioners, and that is, first we help you have an experience of each of the 4 quadrants, so you know what they feel like in your body. And then we talk about how to apply that with your clients, depending on what kind of work you're doing. So that's a really fun one. And you'll find that on the website also. BettyMartin.org. Oh, and you can get a free chapter of the book there too. Download a free chapter just to give you a taste of what it's like.
And you have a YouTube
And there's a
channel as
bunch
well.
of, yeah, a YouTube channel. And there's hours and hours of free video on my website that takes you through all of this. Go help yourself. Yeah.
And those YouTube videos, absolutely amazing, Betty. And especially the other people you talk to and the things that they bring in. Betty, I know you have to go soon. I'm going to certainly not hold you up, but I hope this is not the last of our interviews. When I create my course, I definitely am having you as a guest teacher.
Great.
Because I think you really bring such an important piece. When I interview you again, which you're not going to get away with.
Okay, no, let's do it. This been fun.
Yeah, I'm going to go into how this goes beyond the paradigm of touch and how it goes into relationships and how it goes into the world. This is really,
excellent.
Yeah, I'd love to just get your insights on that.
Yeah.
Betty, thank you so much.
You are so welcome. I enjoyed it. It was great to see you again.
Great to see you. And hopefully it's not going to be the last, girl.
Yeah, no, it's not 20 years. Okay.
All right. All right, Betty.
Care.
Thanks again. You take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.